Who amongst you is ready for another Survivors game? Remember that show Survivor, by the way? Is that still on? Regardless, the Grim Reaper shall hopefully meet his end in Death Must Die, a self-described roguelite RPG bullet heaven from Realm Archive. But will this game be a killer good time, or is it going to be the death of me? Find out in our early access review. You shouldn't fear the Reaper, folks, but you should definitely be scared of the gaming echo chamber. Fight back at patreon.com/idreamofindiegames to gain Discord access, early ad-free and sponsor-free shows, exclusive live streams, a new podcast, and so much more. Your community is waiting for you. Death Must Die is quite literal in its title. The Grim Reaper is a total dickwad, and it's up to you and a group of heroes to kill the bastard. With the game being in early access, you'll get but a taste of what's to come, but what we have here thus far is quite promising. My first suggestion, however, for Realm Archive? Please consider getting a writer. Currently there's very little story here, but the dialogue that is present is pretty lackluster. It appears they tried for modern speech and slang, complete with emojis and abbreviations, perhaps to fit in with current times or even appeal to a younger audience, but unfortunately it ends up feeling a little out of place for me, and it made the interactions fall flat. You'll have brief conversations with gods and goddesses, but not really learn all that much outside of your main mission. In fact, while the game is rather straightforward in general, some degree of tutorial might be beneficial for those who haven't played a Survivor-style game before. Anyways, Death Must Die may currently be lacking a rich narrative, but the world itself along with the characters within that world all have a very distinct art style that works well. From green slimes to sword-wielding skeletons, you might get a feeling of deja vu as these are all creatures you've most certainly encountered in a million other games, but on the bright side everything feels cohesive and has a brooding dark tone that I quite enjoyed. But how does the game play so far, and what does Early Access offer you, you ask? Well, if you're familiar with Vampire Survivors or the many other games it's now influenced, you'll feel right at home. If not, expect a simplistic one-button combat system as you move about a giant open area, taking down baddies, dashing out of the way of attacks, and collecting green crystals to level up. Leveling up means you'll be visited by a god who supports your campaign to defeat death, and so they shall lend you some of their powers. You'll select between 3 of those skills, and before you know it, your character dropping lightning bolts, leaving trails of fire and ice, or even spinning blades of chaos madly. The more enemies you kill, the more powerful you become. Outside of that, it's simply about surviving. The game does have a timer with specific events that occur at certain times, and perks, some of which are temporary, some of which are permanent, will aid you on your run. It's pretty easy to tell where perks are scattered as they will show as giant yellow orbs on the map located on the upper right portion of your screen. Just be careful, some shrines offer negative effects and you'll have to deal with the consequences. Players will also be able to purchase equipment once a shop opens in your main hub world, but it can also be found through runs. I enjoyed this light RPG mechanic of the game, just don't expect intense stat crunching or anything like that. Should you die on your run, and trust me you shall, you'll also work towards other goals such as achievements and unlocking new characters. In my time with the game I managed to gather 4 characters total, which all play a little bit differently from one another. Maris the Sorceress, for example, shoots magic and strikes from a distance, while Averon the Knight is more of a close-range melee attacker. Characters also have different speeds, HP, and equipable items. I personally enjoyed Maris the most, but perhaps you'll feel differently. The developers have stated that you'll get roughly 3 to 6 hours of gameplay out of the current early access version, so while what's here is relatively polished in terms of gameplay, obviously don't expect a ton of content if you plan to jump in early. Just like with any other early access release, you're buying into the potential outcome of the game to continually improve. However, there's enough here to make me feel confident that it will. As far as my gripes with the current state of the gameplay, I found the dash to leave a bit to be desired myself. When areas lock down, such as when a group of slimes attacks, your limited dash really becomes a problem. While you might get lucky and upgrade it a few times, you still have a stamina meter, and that led to me taking plenty of hits that I otherwise would have been able to avoid. I guess it's part of the strategy, but I do feel like that mechanic still needs a little bit of fine-tuning. I will also say that the accessibility options offered are a little limited as of now, and while you can crank up how much damage you deal, Death Must Die still heavily relies on you not getting hit, so if you can't get used to the dodging and struggle a bit with that, you might be out of luck. Still, most runs felt like they meant something. Whether you find new equipment, gather a new ability, or perhaps unlock a character, the developers have done a good job thus far rewarding players for their failures. Often, I get frustrated with games where I lose everything, and that just didn't feel as egregious here. But all told, this talented team of 4 developers is on the right track. With some fine-tuning and some workshopping in the writing department, Death Must Die just might end up being your new favorite Survivor game. I have a feeling it will also appeal to the Hades crowd a bit with some of the characters and boons. Its lovely visual design is appealing, and while the soundtrack is rather forgettable and the sound effects in a few instances are even a bit intrusive, I did ultimately have fun playing this one. They are saying that early access period is going to last about a year, and we look forward to reviewing the final build whenever it arrives, but as for players wanting to dive in now, you could definitely do worse.
Fear not, frail mortal, for I've come to guide you.